We're all going to learn again. Hello again. Just started the recording. So, welcome into the 3-day experience to elevate your skills, elevate your recognition that you get for who you are, and your online presence. So, I don't know many courses that are going to cover all of those for you for free and in an excited way. So, we're going to talk about babies. We're going to talk about neurological lens, how to look at them in from a different way to make a bigger impact. We're going to talk about that, how that relates to your recognition as a professional, how that can elevate you. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how do you present yourself to the world to get more clients. Maybe you're would love to have a wait list, right? Maybe you would love to be able to choose the clients that you work with and not just have to take all of them. So these are kind of things that I want you to think about as we go forward. What is something that you would like to be better about your baby business? Everybody in this field, I shouldn't say everybody, let's say most infant professionals care really deeply. Okay. Let me change my view. Sorry here. No, that was wrong. Hold on. um, One second. Apologize for that. Um, all right. If there's something in the chat, y'all can post questions and comments here. I do really want to know who what you do. You're at NCS. Are you a doula? Um, are you? I'm trying to move this. Does it work? That's okay. Are you an infant nanny? Are you an educator? So let me know. A lot of times you guys have multiple things. So I want to start with this. Um, Most infant, like I said, providers care really deeply, and most work really hard, and most want to make a really big impact. But sometimes, as a caregiver and a caretaker, your families view this as an extra, right? Like not necessary, right? And, you know, like I can do it on my own, kind of like a luxury. And one of the reasons that I know this is because that was me. So this has been a while now. So don't take this personally. It's before I was in this business and knew about the impact that this professionals and providers like you can have on a family. And so I did it alone. I have two beautiful children. So thank God I did okay. But point of the story is that I also wanted to make sure that everything was done to the best that it can be done. And to me, at that point, it meant me. Like I have to do everything. And I'm giving you this perspective because I would be your client, right? I would be the mom having the baby and being a professional. So a lot of times you guys work for people in the medical field, doctors and higher end people because they have the finances to be able to hire someone. So when you have that was me, right? So I was like first baby and have a lot of this clinical experience and education and this and that. If I would have known that I could have hired someone that had some of the background that I had, that would have been a game changer for me. I probably would not have been, I mean, I was exhausted and it was just the feeling that I had to do it alone, that there wasn't another option of someone. It would be too hard to teach them how I wanted it done or what I felt like. So, for example, if I had known that there was a doula who could come home with me or an NCS, and I would have actually taken some rest, right? Who knew about how important the early development was, who knew about how the neurological system is forming. And then, like, if they noticed something, would bring it to my attention, for example. Or, like, I would have felt so much more secure taking some rest for myself if I had known that, just that's the background that I come from. So if you have anyone who's either had a bad experience with health or a hospital situation with their baby, so let's say post NICU, or anyone who works in the medical field, if they knew, like me, someone had this extra neurological lens on their baby, it would really, really change. First of all, maybe not thinking they had to do it all alone. And secondly, it would change the fact that they would be willing to invest more. You know, we're going to talk about in the VIP, if anyone is and when we stick around after this for the VIP time, we're going to talk about how you can take this knowledge from today and apply it to your business and increase your monthly income. So we all want to make a huge difference in the world, but we also all have to be able to survive. We all have to make a salary. We all have to, and raising I was going to say this a little bit, but you can't just raise rates because you want to make more money. It has to connect to something. You have to have the identity shift first about who you are, right? What are you bringing? Why is it important to your client? You have to connect all of that. And I don't see that when I'm in, nanny groups or doula groups who want to make more money or who want to charge more, or they want more value. They're like, why is that missing? But you can't just raise it with no identity shift of, first of all, believing, like, why am I raising it? What am I bringing? And then your client has to understand, what are you bringing? Why are you worth this amount? Why are you different from the four other people that I just interviewed? They all say they're NCS, for example. Um, anyhow, so back to the if I had known the things, if I had known that someone knew the things that I did about the body, the brain, the power of intentional interaction with a baby and the nurturing and how all of that connects everything, then I would have been more likely to have some help and I would have gotten rest. That would have been a game changer for my family. Okay. And I know you all know that, but you might not know that from the perspective of your client. Okay. Um, okay. So today we're going to talk about, this is going to be fun. We're going to get into the neurodevelopmental lens of how you can look at a baby differently. I want you to take the experience that you already have, and I want to shift that lens to where you can see even deeper into what is going on with the baby and what it means, right? We're going to talk about the what a little bit, like what early movement patterns, what are they, which ones are communicating that something's either connecting well or it's not connecting well. And we're going to talk about primitive reflexes just a little bit, because I want you to understand how those are affecting what you see, how those affect the neurological growth. And I have a great example of a new client that I just got. And then we'll talk also about NICU grads and what they're most vulnerable to. So how many of you work with babies who've been in the NICU? Let me know in the chat. Even if not currently, but how many of you work with babies that have graduated from NICU? All right, I hope my voice is better now because I've been talking for a bit. All right, let me know there and I'll keep going. So I want to talk about the early movement patterns that show how the nervous system is organizing. Okay. Thank you, Kimberly, for answering. It helps me to gear what I'm going to talk about. So a little information on the nervous system for birth is that it's about 20% formed. Okay. It's about, so a lot of the senses come online, they come when in utero. Okay. Like the senses that we know. So like vision and hearing and touch. They're some of the earliest things to be developed. what a lot of people don't know is that when a baby is born early, they miss out on um the connection of the sensory system. So it's more in the fine tuning and the processing. And so if you've ever worked with children later on who are a little older, and you've heard the term sensory processing challenges, or children with autism will have sensory processing disorder or things like that. It doesn't mean you have autism. Those two aren't mutually exclusive, but the processing of the sensory systems are all fine tuned in the last few weeks of gestation. Okay. So I'll give you a couple examples to bring that more into view. But what that does, so if a baby's born early because of an emergency or whatever, their system has missed out on a lot of the organization. Okay. And we see that as regulation problems. So all of these words, let me know if you're familiar with what I'm talking about. There's a lot of research out right now, a lot of conversation about this. So infant regulation is like their ability, everybody says self-soothe, right? That's a way to describe it. And babies aren't supposed to self-soothe. So remember I said when they're born, their neurological system is about 20% formed. And approximately, don't quote me. But then they learn, the brain learns and it grows based on experiences and opportunities that they have. So if a baby has many, many experiences, opportunities, it's going to direct the growth, it's going to guide it. Okay. So you have your right hemisphere and your left hemisphere, and you have the middle here. I'll just give you a little bit about the neurosystem, the corpus callosum. And so it's very, very, very important that the right and the left brain form connections across the corpus callosum. Okay. And that happens by them using the right side, the left side, including the vision, including the auditory system, including there's the vestibular with movement. Okay. So we're getting a little bit closer into the movement piece, but I want you to understand why this is so important. And so we're going to talk about there's some movement patterns that are like a window into what's happening in this neurological system. Okay. And I I think I've coined that phrase. I haven't, I say that movement is a window into the brain development. It shows us if everything is clicking and going beautifully, and it shows us if it's not. Okay. So there are some movement patterns, and I'll name a few right here. So you can start to see what I'm talking about. So the communication is happening, and people aren't always listening because maybe we don't speak that language. Like I said, if I hire someone as to help me as a new mom struggling with all the new mom things, who I knew had this lens, it probably would have been a no-brainer. I would have been like, I have savings and this is important. Okay. Not everybody makes this connection. And so I want you to realize how we're leading this. I'm creating a loop for you. We're leading this into how you can speak of this to your clients so they know your value. And then that's when your identity grows, and that's when your rates can go up. Your confidence is going to come. So if you were speaking to someone like me and you could say about the neurological lens that you have and how you can see the movement patterns, and you realize that that shows how the brain is developing, and you can guide that on the best path for their baby, can you imagine how you would be hired over the 4 other people that they're interviewing? Can you see that? Because I would have hired you. So okay, back to a few of the movement patterns. Okay, so like I said, it's a communication. So one really common thing that's going on right now is oral restrictions. Okay, so we have tongue tie, which is basically a short frenulum. okay, underneath your tongue. And you have, lip restrictions, and you have cheek, even cheek ties, they call them restrictions. Okay. So this is one of my examples. Hot topic here. So let's jump in. If these are restricted, okay, this is showing that there's something going on that's not moving correctly. Okay. When you have these, it's not that we can say, oh, I know the cause now. But my point of view is a little bit different than what you're reading and seeing out there. I believe that the system, our whole system, the body, the brain, the hand, the leg, the pelvis, the spine, it's not separate from the mouth. Okay. And it's also not separate from how they sleep. And it's not separate from if they're taking the bottle correctly or if they're having a latching troubles. It's not separate. You have a baby who is an entire whole system, one body, right? One, it's all growing together and it has to be interconnected. So when a baby has let's say, a restriction in their mouth, it's not going to only be affecting their mouth, and it might not only be solved by lasering and cutting the tissue of a newborn baby. Okay. I'm going to share just to expand on this a little and not like leave you hanging. So for 25 years, maybe, in case you don't know me, if you're new to me, sorry, I forgot to ask that. If you're new to me, you're just meeting me, put me in the chat. I would love to know if you're new or if you've known me for a while. I am a clinical pediatric physical therapist, and so among other things, I'm also was a teacher, and I worked with general ed. I worked with special education. I have worked clinically with children in every single environment that they can be in when they have special needs and if they don't have special needs. Okay, so I'm speaking about let's go back to the short frenulum. So anatomically short frenulum, which is the piece under your tongue. And I worked many, many, many years with children who were diagnosed with cerebral palsy, and they either had birth trauma or whatever it was, and then they go down the medical route. The doctor says, oh yeah, there's a big enough problem. And then they get sent probably to a neurologist, and then eventually they end up in a clinic. Hopefully the therapist has a background in neuro training and how to work with that child. So the majority of those children had an anatomically short frenulum. Like it was literally short, but their body was a just tight mess. Like everything was tight. So it was either all four limbs and their trunk, or you can have only your lowers and your feet and whatever. Point of me sharing this is that was the least of their worries. So it wasn't like this big conversation about their tight frenulum. Sometimes they would have a tongue tie release, but we were also working on their whole body because everything's interconnected. So it wasn't like this huge, like, oh my gosh, they have a short frenulum. But that percentage of the population is pretty small. Nowadays, for some reason, the percentage of the population of babies that has, which people are calling oral restrictions or ties. Everybody talks about ties. Everybody and their untrained grandma is in forgive me if this is unpopular, but it's true. I've looked them up. Okay, so everyone in their untrained whatever, they're in the groups and they're telling other moms what their baby it definitely has. That's definitely that, and you need to go have a cold lasers, and you need to go to this professional, and you need to do this. And oh, by the way, it gets worse before it gets better. To your infant. Okay. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying no baby needs to have this procedure, but the percentage of babies who are having this is very, very high right now. And one of those reasons is likely that it's looked for more than it used to be. Okay, so that's always one reason. But the second reason takes us back to our movement as a window. Because a lot of babies in general are born either early now or they have emergency C-sections. There's a lot, and they're also medically challenged children that previously would not have made it. Okay, and they are thankfully, being able to be born and live full lives. What happens to those children is that they likely had needed help to be birthed. So when that happens, their primitive reflexes are late. They haven't developed yet. So there's certain reflexes that come online at the very, very, very bottom of your brainstem. They're innately wired. This is part of the 20%. They come online to help with the birthing experience and getting down the canal and getting them turned the right way, doing all the things and getting, into the world. And so if they don't have that experience for whatever reason, their primitive reflexes likely were late. Okay. And if there was another issue and they were delivered via C-section, their body didn't get the chance to use the reflex to get out. So they missed that opportunity too. Okay. Now, can you see the connection between missing some of these experiences and possibly having oral restrictions because their body's going to be restricted? Their body and their neurological system that's growing has missed out on some things that process it through what it's supposed to do to mature. Now, the other thing I mentioned was that the end of gestation is when the fine tuning of our sensory system. And when I say processing, do you guys want me to share more about what that means? The fine tuning of the processing. I want to give y'all what will help you the most while you're here. So let me know if that's something. Okay, I don't see it yet. I know it takes a minute sometimes to find your chat and to answer a question. So no worries. All right, I'll wait on that. I'll go back to it if you guys want to hear about that. So what I'm talking about is this one oral motor challenge. It has to be organized. You have muscles, you have a tongue, you have all of these things. They have to be strong enough. So if they're like weak and floppy, like low tone, that's one reason. And they have to be, so the organization that comes in at the end of gestation is very important to the organization in the mouth. Okay. So if they don't get the full experience of what they're supposed to be doing and they missed out or the reflex is late, they're not going to have this ability. So that if it shows they can't latch correctly or the mom is having pain, the common thing these days is you Google it and then it says you have a tongue tie. And then if it looks short, depending on what professional you have, yes, you need to get that laser. So it's like the path that's created right now. And so everyone goes down it. And some babies will be like those children who had actual short frenulum. They get it lasered and everything gets easier. That is a very small percentage. Most of the parents are saying how difficult it is afterwards. The baby's not organized. And so every time you cut something that's tied in the body, you have to re-educate it how to work. So the baby, let's imagine the baby's like 6 months or 9 months because they wait long sometimes. Let's go with 6 months. For 6 months of their life, they haven't been able to move whatever it is, their tongue. So then all of a sudden, you can move it. It doesn't know how to do it. One mom said, yeah, we had this procedure and it's been terrible doing the exercises. And now like the nipple falls out of her mouth. Like she can't even drink. So to me, they cut it and she has no tone. She has no muscle. She has no communication to the neurological system that says oh, you want me to use this? This is how it works. Okay. And so she had the exercises. You're supposed to do the stretches. That's for the wound care. I won't go into that. And then if people get some oral training and it's not from someone who understands the mechanics or the neurological system, it doesn't look at the whole body, the whole body. Okay. A lot of people don't know the trunk mimics the mouth. Okay. So if you want more on that topic, let me know. Join the VIP. We can talk about it. I'm going to move on to the trunk area. So another movement pattern that shows how the nervous system is organizing. Is this connecting, you guys, before I keep going? Is this good? Is this like helpful? I would love to know if this is helpful for you. And I will keep going. Um, okay, so another movement is when a baby's arms are held backwards. Thank you, Kimberly. If a lot of babies I see these days, when people are holding them, all ages, their arms are kind of backwards, and the baby's kind of falls a little bit sometimes, and so you can see their body is kind of straight, and like so the parent has to hold them higher, right? So they don't like flip out, fall on the ground. So I see this all the time. Wherever I go somewhere, I mean, plus I'm a little bit abnormal how I see these things, but um all the time. I used to be 100% spot on with guessing a baby's age. Like, oh my gosh, is your baby 6 months? She's so cute. I don't say it anymore because every time I did that in the past, say, year, I was the baby was way older than I thought they were. So they were like, oh, she's 9 months. Thanks. And I'm like, okay. So I stopped saying it because every baby that I would say, it's like they're delayed. So I would think they're 6 months, they're actually 9 or 10. So they're all delayed, which is fascinating because these are random people in a grocery store. Okay. So the movement pattern of arms being back, for example, is not helpful. It shows that the nervous system is not organized um, correctly. Okay, it doesn't mean equal they have a disability. It's not that. It equals a conversation, a communication with us that something is not ideal with this development. So when I see these babies like this, right, I know for sure they're not rolling. They probably hate tummy time. They're probably in a swing because it's probably how they sleep, or they're in one of the suits, a Merlin or a Snoo or something. And then they also missing hair on the back of their head. I'm sure we've all seen that. So this is another movement pattern that communicates to us. It's not organized because what happened? They're not using their trunk. They probably have weakness in their mouth, like all of this stuff. Okay. So what we're going to translate into tomorrow is how to communicate some of these things that'll elevate you. Okay, so today is kind of like it's the neurological lens. That's what we're talking about today. And we're going to move into the why a little bit in a minute. And then tomorrow, if you want to, if you're in VIP, we're going to talk about how to relate this to your individual business. Okay. But tomorrow, don't miss tomorrow, we are going to talk about how to convey this, communicate this, use this for your own like recognition, your own fulfillment of what you want to be giving to parents. Okay. If you have a question today, pop it in the chat. Okay, so that's two. I'll just leave it at that, those two examples for today. And then I want to share a little bit about, I mentioned for NICU grads, what they're most vulnerable to is the sensory system regulation. Because they were born early. So by the way, the arms should be in the front. Just for a quick, let's not leave it on what's wrong. The arms should be in the front. Okay, so if the baby won't do it this way, then we need to change the position. You need to teach that to the parents. You need to be able to say why, right? Or they're going to blow you off and be like, she doesn't like that. Why would I do that? They're going to be like, oh, okay, you're my nanny. Thanks a lot. They don't have that perception. We're going to talk about that as well. So I'm telling you, the hands need to be in the front and this flexion. Okay. Didn't want to leave that there for you. NICU grads are most sensitive, most vulnerable to um, their regulation of their sensory system because of that last few weeks that they miss. Sometimes they're born even earlier, right? Like 27 weeks, 30 weeks. So they definitely did not get that final pulling together of everything so then it clicks and makes sense. Picture a child who is kind of lack of coordination. I'll tell you a short story for this one that fast forwards this infancy conversation into childhood. So I have the experience of birth to like 18, uh, normal development, abnormal development, every disability that they might have, and the progression of it. Okay. So it's like this crystal ball. And this is why this is so important. And I'm so passionate about this, is because I can see what the future is for them. Um, and so I don't want that for them. I always wanted a magic wand when I was part of the after story of the children who already had a problem. They already had a struggle in their life, and there was nothing I could do about it. They're like 5, and they come to me and they have a lot of difficulties. So my example I want to give you is, so there's this boy I worked with. He was about 9 or 10, and my son's 11. So I really, really understand this. And he came to me for his diagnosis was kind of obtuse, lack of coordination. And that was actually a medical diagnosis. So that's how they come to us a lot of times. And it's like we just have to figure out where the breakdown is. And so I was talking with him and I said, okay, what do you want to get better at? And he said, I really want to be better at basketball. And I said, okay, why is that important to you? He says, because I don't have any friends. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, well, at recess, I'm not making this up, guys. It was a real story of my career. He said, at recess, I sit under the stairs because I can't jump into the game because I can't do that. So he would fall, right? So have you ever seen 10-year-olds play basketball at recess? It's pretty intense. And they check, they shove, they fall on their butt, whatever. He's like, I can't play. So he goes, I don't have any friends. And so this led to the conversation of me realizing how much sadness and anxiety this child could have with not having any friends, which is coming from he doesn't trust his body to be organized so that he can jump in a simple game of basketball. Okay. We don't always think of that when we're working with babies because you don't see that bridge. I see the bridge, which is why I'm teaching this in the first place. So go back a little bit to that NICU graduate who was born early and their sensory system is not refined and it's not regulated and organized. They came out early, right? Imagine if someone knew that, okay? The doula who goes home with the family or the NCS that was booked during pregnancy, who is paid really, really well to know everything about the baby, and the parent doesn't know that this information is missing, right? But imagine those professionals who also know this baby was born at 30 weeks. She missed the organization of her rooting reflex and getting her thumb in her hands to her mouth. And she missed the opportunity of let's say, what's a good one? Startle is a good reflex to talk about too, but there's one called TLR, tonic labyrinth. And so if they miss that opportunity, it's their trunk going side to side, and it's like it adjusts right here. It shortens and adjusts and helps them get out and they have to move and use everything. These are ingrained, kind of like with animals, they have their instincts. These are ingrained in us. But if you're born early, it hasn't come online yet. So what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to come and they're supposed to go at a certain time. We call it integration. So NICU babies, regulation, all of that, they're gonna, if we knew ahead of time, which now you do, you can't unlearn this, that their system was going to be a little behind, and in what ways? You could facilitate that from day one in helping to organize and regulate their sensory system, okay, which is tied to the motor system, which helps coordination, it helps balance, it helps the visual processing. So that's like the information that you see and it comes in and it's processed. And now I can move my body and catch a ball without falling. Okay. It's the gravitational response from their feet. Okay. Without getting too technical, their ankles, how you have balance, how my sweet friend couldn't organize his body to play basketball. Okay. All of this, I gave you a couple examples for babies, and then this is an example of how it can play out. Okay. So I hope that this is giving you a really good picture of the neurological lens and how we can guide it onto the best path for each child, for each baby. Okay. When they get a little older, this is why I teach the first year. My curriculum for providers is for the first year. And ideally, I get the providers who work at the beginning because we have the most ability to change. Once they get to be that 5-year-old and 9-year-old, it becomes more clinical because things are already programmed in maybe the wrong way. So we have to clinically evaluate and then reteach. We call it neuro reeducation, I think I said. So we have to redo it so it becomes more clinical. But this first year is not clinical yet. They don't have a diagnosis. They don't have a limitation. The pediatricians usually say everything is fine unless it's like huge, right? Unless it's a huge problem. Unless they're not gaining weight, then they're like, oh, something must be wrong. They're not gaining weight. But how about the mom's stress? How about the mom's anxiety? How about her worry? Okay. My newest client that I just am fortunate enough to meet, her baby is literally not moving the left arm. The right one, da, 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 all the things. So you can see, like I said, there's movements that show the nervous system is organizing and it all looks great. Her right arm is doing all the great things. There's no problems. I would just play with her, right? Play with purpose. Her left arm is like doing nothing. And so I said, what does your pediatrician say? Like, why are we meeting virtually? Like, what's going on? And she was like, well, they sent us for x-rays to see if, there was anything broken or whatever. I was like, okay, well, that's great. And then what? Because nothing's broken. Okay. Um, they're like, well, that's it. Okay. So the baby's literally like, so I said, scoot her to the right side of the bassinet. She's on her back. And let's see what she does. Does she try to lift it? Is she able? Does she scoot over? Sometimes babies will scoot over so then they can use the right hand. So poor baby. I'm really glad that we met. Poor baby didn't do anything. She laid on the right side of her bassinet and stared. She turned her head and she stares at the toys because they're up here, on a mobile. She stares at them. And then her grandma even put a little bit of pressure on the right hand and like she can't lift it. Okay. So I'm telling you this story because even the pediatrician isn't giving them, yeah, this is a really big deal. This is showing her brain is not working for her left arm. The pediatrician isn't saying that. So imagine if you, as the provider, knew how to start engaging that left arm and getting the connections to form in a safe way. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. That's what we're talking about here. And then if it's the other thing I don't want to leave out is that there's always a referral part to what I teach because I'm not teaching you to be a clinical provider. I'm not teaching you to be a healthcare professional. I can't transfer that to you. So this is all within your scope. In case I didn't say that yet, I think I did not. Is all within your scope of what you can do and what you can promote and guide. Okay. And then if that baby, this case would probably be, but if you're doing these, I'm going to talk about movement sequences tomorrow. If you're doing the movement sequences, you're already helping. And then if that baby just looks like it's, she needs more help, that's where you refer. Okay. And then you help that family simplify the referral process because you're like, this is what I'm seeing. This is what it means. This is what we're working on. I want you to keep doing this. And this is who I want you to go see because she needs more help. Imagine how life-changing that is for a family who's going through something they don't even know. The mom feels she's like, I don't even know when this started. She's like, I feel so bad. I didn't even notice. She said, I'm a first-time mom and I don't know. I just didn't notice. So she even feels guilt. It's not her job, it's the doctor's job. But they don't have this developmental lens. So this neurological lens I'm giving you, they should have it, but they don't. It's just they have so many things on their list, including how many vaccines can I give you this visit? That seems to be changing. There's some research out there now, but check for allergies, check for weight, give your shots, look at mom for about 15, 20 seconds and try to make sure she's not having postpartum depression. They're just so busy. They have to go. They have to go. Okay, so let me see if I left anything out. Okay, a little bit, and then I'll see if you have any questions for me. A little bit on the why that I didn't cover. Let me think. If you have a question for me, pop it in the chat now so I can make sure I cover it. Okay, we talked some about this. But I hope you can see now why a family would trust the provider who can say what is going on, what they're seeing, and what they're doing, right? So if you're gonna do tummy time, we all know everybody's like, even parents like, yeah, we're supposed to do that. They don't really know why. They're exhausted, they're in pain, right? And you do it, even you, and the baby's like arms are back and she face plants and she hates it and she's crying. Maybe you've learned, I don't have one, the technique, maybe to put a little roll under their chest so it helps a little bit. But what happens if it still doesn't work? How do you problem solve that? How do you know if it's a serious issue or not? You don't. So you say, if you're brave enough to not get step out of your what you think is your perceived scope to the parent, right? If you're brave enough to say, Sarah's really not liking tummy time, I want her to be more successful and have the best time and best experience. Could you please ask your doctor about this? So if you're brave enough to even say that, 9 times out of 10, the doctor will not say it's a problem. 9 times out of 10, they will go, oh, maybe she's having reflux. I'll put her on Pepcid. Here's a prescription. That's one. Or try putting her in the swing instead of the floor, which is the absolute wrong thing to do. But baby stops crying. So the parent thinks, okay, that worked, right? Because right now, the way the system has set it up for you is not to know any of these problem solving things, this higher level of care. It's to just refer to the pediatrician. They're the gatekeeper, right? And then it's out of your hands. You can't do anything after that. Even if a parent chooses to go to a chiropractor, I want to add a lot of this movement stuff is missed. Okay. Chiros are they're really good at providing space. Like if there's restrictions from birth, they they give that movement, but they don't reteach how to use it. So the baby it just goes back. Okay, so they have things that they help with, but it's not the complete story. Okay, so I'm going to end with that, and I want to share that the recognition that you desire and that you deserve doesn't come from like working harder and more hours, and working longer. That recognition doesn't come from that. It comes from a deeper understanding of what these clients need and a deeper understanding of what's happening in the baby. And when someone tells you that they have a course on sleep and it's also infant development, it's not. It's not. They're teaching sleep training, okay, which is different conversation. But this deeper understanding of the baby, okay, that's what gets the recognition that you desire and that you deserve. Okay. I am going to end on that for today. Thank you. Thank you for so much for being here. And I would love to see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, do not miss tomorrow. Like I said, we are going to talk about how, first of all, VIP starting now, 10 minutes. And we're going to talk about how you can take this into your own personal business. What are your business goals? What's going on for you now? Do you need more clients? Do you need better clients? Do you need higher rate client? What do you need? Do you need confidence in yourself? So we're going to talk about that in VIP. You can customize it. But tomorrow, we're giving you the communication piece. We're going to also talk about your statement. We're going to work on I help who with what so that they can. We're going to do, I want you to reflect on something before tomorrow. Okay. What do you want to be known for in your community? Reflect on that because that is going to lead you in to the trainings tomorrow about how you start to work on some of this and incorporate it in what you do. Okay. There's your homework. And if you're brave enough, you can share it tomorrow. But what do you want to be known for in your community? Okay. Thank you so much for being here. If you are in VIP, it's a different Zoom link. And I will see you in about 10 minutes. Thank you all. And I will see you tomorrow.